Shalom. Thank you all for joining us tonight to discuss the topic of parenting during a pandemic. For those who don't already know me, my name is Ali Wiener Abraham. I am the Jewish Education and Early Childhood Education Coordinator at the JCC of the Lehigh Valley in Allentown, Pennsylvania. I myself am a parent of 2 young children and wear plenty of hats in our community as a teacher, educator, and support for our teachers and parents within our community. In the last few months, I have learned a lot about myself and my family along with their unique needs. That was the inspiration for this program to help other parents and teachers learn new ways to be present, productive, connect, and guide the children in our lives that we care so deeply for. Today's topic is a unique one. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I would be living through a pandemic and raising children in this situation. So I am excited to introduce you to our amazing speaker tonight, Sally Ruchin.
Hi, everyone.
Please introduce yourself. Tell us about your background.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. So I am a certified school psychologist. I am a mother of 3 beautiful young children. I'm also the founder of Whole Brain Yoga, which uses a yoga practice to teach social emotional skills to children in school. And I'm also pursuing my clinical degree right now. So juggling a lot and doing a lot, but I'm happy that I can do this for you guys. And while I was putting the presentation together and kind of thinking about parenting through a pandemic, I realized that a lot of the techniques that we're going to be talking about today are things that we can really use, not just in a pandemic, but in stressful situations. And I think we can apply them to different settings and different situations. So I hope that I can just give you ideas of what you can pick and choose that seems right to your life and for your family, or if you're a teacher, for your classroom. And I came up with some questions that I thought we can discuss also at the end if you guys are interested or you have your own questions. So let's get started. I'm going to start the PowerPoint. I'll share my screen. Okay, just let me know. Everyone can see? Okay, awesome. All right. So I know discussing the topic with Ali, parenting through a pandemic, I mentioned that, the pandemic in a lot of situations is very controversial for people, wearing a mask, not wearing a mask, what people are comfortable with. And I've come to find that it's really very individual. We're kind of going through this together. It's a very new situation to all of us, and we're doing what feels comfortable and within our comfort zone. And that's why I think a lot of the techniques here are things that you can kind of introduce what fits your own life, because the experiences that we've had in the past are going to dictate how we are acting in our environment right now. And even though we're going through this together, our experiences are very different. So something to think about is just the way that we're reacting and what message we're giving our children. What are they receiving from how we're reacting in this situation? So life has definitely changed a lot, right? Everything feels and looks very different. Everything from school to our play dates, family gatherings, canceled vacations. Today is my daughter's birthday. We kind of had to revamp what we originally had planned for her because who thought we would still be in this pandemic? So it's been very different. And our behaviors, right? Wearing a mask, having to social distance, coming up with our boundaries that we're comfortable with. These are all big changes that.
Can everyone just remember to mute their phones? I'm hearing some background. I'm having trouble hearing you. If everyone can remember to mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you so much. What was I going to say? Oh, so we're coming up with our new boundaries, right? What makes us feel comfortable, and all of these changes and transitions, and really dealing with the unknown. Is school going to be open next week? Are we going to be on Zoom? Can really be anxiety provoking, not just for us as parents, but definitely for our kids. So what does that look like for our kids? What does the anxiety or stress, how do we see that in our kids? So depending on the age, right? Different ages will show it in different ways, but there can be intense worry. It can be worry of the unknown, worrying about if someone gets sick, are they going to school, not going to school? And again, depending on the age, our kids might have difficulty verbalizing how they feel. Maybe they don't really know how they feel. They've never had these feelings before and don't know how to put them into words. And this is when it's really important to look at the behaviors, because our kids' behaviors can tell us so much. It's the way they kind of reach out to us and try to show us really what's happening. So some of the behaviors that we can be seeing if our kids are feeling anxious or scared or stressed would be having tantrums or very rigid behavior, like not wanting to do a lot of things that maybe they enjoyed doing before, and even avoidant behavior. If they're trying to get out of situations that they know might be making them feel a certain way, they might act out just to get out of those certain situations. We might see that they're having trouble sleeping or staying asleep. And a lot of times our kids will show somatic symptoms like belly aches and headaches. They'll be complaining about something hurting them. And for our teachers, they might be seeing a lack of focus in school. And we're going to be talking about soon, well, I guess we can, our stress response. So our nervous system has a lot to do with it. And once we understand how our nervous system works, we can maybe come up with solutions to how better help our children. So our nervous system has different parts, but we're going to be focusing today about our parasympathetic nervous system and our sympathetic nervous system. With our parasympathetic nervous system, the focus or the job of that nervous system is digest and rest, right? So it helps us find our balance. It keeps us in homeostasis. It's basically what we should be doing and feeling and functioning on a regular basis when we're not stressed, when we're feeling good. And our sympathetic nervous system is, the stress response. Sometimes we hear people call it the fight, flight, or freeze response, right? So when we're feeling very high anxiety or stress, our body automatically goes into that stress response, and our sympathetic nervous system takes over. So that means our parasympathetic nervous system is not functioning at optimal levels, right? Because our energy is now being shifted into our sympathetic nervous system, trying to make sure that we're being kept safe. And what happens sometimes is when we're in a prolonged state of stress, we can sometimes get stuck in our sympathetic nervous system, and that affects our behavior and our thinking and what we're really capable of doing. So I'd like you to think about this while we're talking, because it might help us understand better what we're seeing in our kids or what they might be experiencing and how we can better help them. And I just put this in for my visual learners, right? It's just a different way of kind of understanding it. So we have our performance going up. Let's see if you see my mouse. The performance is going up here. This is like how we perform on a regular basis. And down here we have either the stress or anxiety. So let's take, for example, if you're starting a job and you're not so motivated to start it, maybe the pay is not so great, and you just can't get yourself out of bed, right? So when our stress level is really down, our motivation is really down as well, and our performance is going to be really low. So to function at optimal level, we do need some anxiety or stress to help us and motivate us to work at a good performance level. But when that anxiety continues to go up and gets higher and higher, we're more likely to burn out and we're not functioning at our optimal level. That's when our stress response comes in and our performance starts to decline to the point where sometimes we might not be functioning the way that we usually are or would like to be. So it's just another way to look at it. So now that we know this information, what can we do about it? So some of the techniques or ideas that I've had that I think can help our kids might be things that you're already doing, but maybe didn't think about it. Keeping a routine for our kids is really important. We've kind of been in limbo, for some of us have been in limbo, right? Our routine has completely shifted to something very different. And by keeping a routine, our kids are kind of understanding what is expected, what should they be doing, how should they be doing it. So it gives them a lot of information when we do have a routine. And I'm not saying that they should be overscheduled and have no breaks or nothing to do or too much to do, but it's just giving them a sense of some kind of structure in a feeling of while they're feeling in a situation of being out of control a little bit, because they don't have control over what's happening to them and our environment around us. Checking in regularly with our kids. And when I say that, it's not, just, hey, how's it going? How was your day today? But it's really getting on a deeper level and giving yourself that time to sit down and really have a conversation with your child, because you never know where it's going to go. And if they do bring up something that's bothering them or that they're having difficulty with, you really want to make sure you have that time to talk it out and really ensure that they're feeling well. Providing information ahead of time to help them prepare. So for example, some kids went back to school in September. My kids just ended up going back to school a few weeks ago. So there was a lot of talk in my family about what school is going to look like. Their classrooms look very different from when they left it last year. What does that mean? What kind of behaviors do they need to show, right? We need to be wearing masks all day in school now. It's very different. And giving them the information of what to expect when they actually get there and when they're in that new situation will definitely help them mitigate that anxiety and stress that they might be feeling, and also help them feel more in control of the unknown, like we've been saying. I left creating mindfulness moments to connect as the last one. I think that a lot of times, and especially in our society, we're always on the go and we're doing things on the go. And sometimes we really forget to be present in the moment. And I think it's so important right now, especially to help us check in with our kids and connect with them. So, even planning time in the day where there are no distractions around, no electronics, no TV on, just so you can really have that time to be present in the moment and see what your child needs. Or it's not even for your child, it's for yourself as well, right? When people are in the moment, it really shows us that they care and they're looking out for us, and it's a support, not just for them, but for you as well. Some more techniques. So part of this pandemic and the way that it's really affected a lot of people is our social interactions. And social interactions are so important. It's important for our growth, for our support systems, for our overall happiness. And it's no different for our children. Our children need all of these things too. So some of the things that, I've learned over this pandemic and things that we've done in our family as well, other than Zoom and FaceTime and having safe play dates, is creating unique experiences. So for example, something that we did during the shutdown was having a milkshake contest. So me and my husband, we were the contestants and our kids were the judges. That's what they decided that they want to be. So we each took turns making our milkshakes, and we did them in different ways. I'm very sad to say that I lost, but my husband used ice cream and I made mine more healthy. So I did not win that one. But just doing things like that kind of, they're fun and they're easy to do. And it kind of helps us have a positive experience in an unpleasant situation. My friend had to actually cancel her trip that she's been planning for her children to go to Disneyland. So what she did was they made a pretend vacation. She put on her TV screen a simulation of a roller coaster, and her kids are very little. She put them in these storage bins, and she's shaking the bins as the simulation is going. And she had a family member spraying water in the kids' faces and, a fan going just to make it seem like they're on the roller coaster. And watching the video made me so happy because her kids are giggling. And it was such a nice thing to see that we're trying to change something from a negative to a more positive experience for our kids. Another way I think that we can make really good connections, and I'm thinking of my own family members that are not close by and are elderly, is sending care packages. So my kids have created care packages for them, showing them how much they care and they miss them. and even having them activities that we can later do together on Zoom as a way to connect and kind of have a social experience together. The pictures that you see here on the slide, this is something that we did during the shutdown. It was actually my daughter's idea. She wanted to send messages to the people that are family members that we couldn't go visit. So what we did was I left chalk outside for each family member, and we kind of timed it that everyone rotated, and we left messages on our sidewalks and on our doorsteps and patios, just kind of trying to connect, showing how much we love and we miss each other. And I think it really gave my kids an opportunity to show how they expressed, which might have been difficult for them to share over the phone or over Zoom. So I thought it was a nice way to connect together. Also pen pals. You know, I know this is like maybe very old fashioned, but I think pen pals is such a nice way to really connect with people, and it doesn't need to be with electronics. It can be actually writing out a letter or even emailing, right? Those are good too, but I feel like it's nice. It's nice to know that someone is thinking about you even though they're so far away. And a lot of our family members who are not close to us or that are autoimmune compromised that cannot be around us are missing out on a lot. So this is a way to kind of help them reconnect. Another aspect that I think is really important to help our kids is movement. You know, our young kids, even into our teens, should be moving at least an hour a day. Having some kind of activity, exercise, body movement is so important. And there's so much research that shows how it calms the body, how it helps the body process things that have gone on throughout the day. And since we've been shut into our house, it's made things more difficult. Something that I do very often with my kids is going on hikes. We have a beautiful park in our area, and we put on our masks and we just go out. And we've been doing it whether the weather is nice or not. We even had a play date in the rain just because it's something that I know was so important to my son and his friend, and me and my friend, his mom, were just kind of like, let's do this. And we all sat outside in a safe manner, and they got to have their play date. It made it even more meaningful and fun and unique. I don't think he'll ever forget it. This also means, right, that we might have to relax some of our rules. So for example, I'll give you examples from my own experience. Before the pandemic, my kids did not use a lot of electronics. Their electronic use is very limited. And during the pandemic and Zooming, it has been really a very big change for them. So what we saw was they were Zooming all day long, right? They were distant learners, and they were on the computer for so long that they would complain that their eyes hurt and that they weren't feeling well. But at the same time, in the end of the day, they wanted to see their friends. They wanted to connect somehow. So we still gave them that opportunity to use the electronics as long as it was for social means, right? So if they were talking to their friends on a Zoom call or FaceTime or anything electronic, it was okay with us. We let them do it because it's so important and they do need it. The last thing on here is don't forget to breathe. Breathing is so important, right? It helps sustain our life, but it does more than that. Remember the stress response that we were talking about earlier? So sometimes when we're getting stuck in that sympathetic nervous system state, right? Our breathing pattern actually changes, right? Because when it's quicker because it is a way to help you get, oh, I'm sorry. I hope you guys can still see me. My internet connection is a little spotty. There's a lot of rain where I am, and
Sally, are you still there? Hold on one second. Let's see if we can get her back. Hold on, friends. I'm going to try and get Sally back. Sorry about this. Sally is on her way back. She will be on momentarily. Does anybody have any questions in the meantime? You can either write in the comments, you can ask, and she will be back in just a moment. She's having some technical difficulties.
Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome back, Sally.
Thank you. I actually had to connect my phone because my internet connection on my laptop is not working. So I hope you see me well, but unfortunately you won't be able to see my PowerPoint. But we can continue.
Were there more slides? Because if it helps, I can pull it up.
Oh, yes, there were more slides. That would be great.
So if you want to continue talking, I will pull it up. Or if you wanted to take a moment to see if anybody had any questions, I will pull up your PowerPoint.
Whatever makes it easier for you is fine with me. You want me to wait until you pull it up?
Well, why don't, does anybody have any questions at the moment? I have a question for you.
Sure.
How can you, it's really difficult for some kids with the masks, like you were saying before. How would you help a child socialize now when they really struggle wearing a mask?
So I have a 4-year-old that, we talk about it and he does wear the mask often, but there's a limit to everything that everyone can do, right? I mean, we can't expect a 4-year-old to, maybe we can, but my 4-year-old can definitely not wear his mask all day long. And what we've been doing, especially with play dates, is coming up with ways that they can play at a safe distance when they're not wearing their mask. So what we found and what we were doing a lot of was taking hikes with bikes and riding bikes. This way, each child is on their bike and is not getting close enough to each other that they're in their face, whether they're wearing masks or not. So it's really just coming up with, I feel like we just have to think outside of the box sometimes and come up with ideas and be creative and how we can get those social experiences with what we have to work with. And if our kids are not wearing the masks and we're still looking for a safe way to get together, just finding those activities that can keep them at a safer distance, but that they can still enjoy doing together. Oh, this is awesome. I think we were on the one that said more techniques on the top. And something else about your question that I was just thinking about now is really knowing our kids is so important. We know what they're capable and not, and even setting time limits. If I know that my son can wear it for about an hour or whatever time that it is, making that play date last that long might be a good idea before maybe the he takes off his mask and maybe makes someone else in our group feel uncomfortable. Yes. Awesome. So we were I think I don't know how much you heard before I cut out, because I could still see all of you. I don't know how much you heard about what I was saying. But movement, I think, was the last thing I started talking about, is so important because it really helps us process things. And it's just so healthy for us, and our kids in general, they need it. They need about an hour of movement a day. And it's so important. And breathing techniques can really help us go from the stress response that we were talking about earlier to our homeostasis, right? So like our balance. So what I'd really like to do with everyone is just try one kind of breathing technique, right? There's so many out there that we can use, but a simple one that you can even share with your kids from time to time. So if you're ready and you're willing, and maybe just explore to see how you feel after we do it. If you sit up nice and tall, what we're going to do is we're going to take a deep breath through our nose, hold it for a count of 3, and then blow it out soft and steady through our nose. So here we go. Take a deep breath in, hold it, and out. Again, take a deep breath in, hold it, and out. Last time, take a deep breath in, hold it, and out. So doing some breathing techniques is a really good way to help us relax and help us kind of, I call it like rebooting your computer. Sometimes your computer goes a little bit wacky and just needs to be rebooted for it to kind of think clearly and process better. And it's really something that you can give to yourself, right, as a self-care technique, and teach it to our children. And there's so many apps nowadays that help us with guided meditation. There's an app called Headspace that you can download on your phone, and you can decide how long you want the activity to be, and it just guides you through different kinds of relaxation techniques, whether it's imagery or the breathing techniques similar to what we did now.
So can I ask a question?
Sure.
So my question is, what if, yes, like I believe so much that it's important for children to move. I believe so much that it's important for the kids to do the breathing, and I do really try to initiate the breathing techniques with my kids. However, they don't want to do it. And as a single mother, my kids, most of COVID, were home because I'm an essential worker. So they were home, and my older daughter was monitoring them, and they've gotten into the habit of gadgets. Mommy's not home, guess what? They're playing video games in between classes. They're playing video games after I come back home from work. And it's just, so now when I initiate, let's go outside, it's, no, we want to play. Go ride your bike. No, we want to play on our gadgets. They've gotten so into the habit of being on gadgets that it's just like, what do you mean we have to go outside and play?
Right.
They don't want to do it. And how do you convince them to do it? Yeah, still.
Yes, that's a great question. I'll tell you a little bit, because actually that's something that I'm going to be talking about later also. It's really how we propose it, right? So if I'm going to say to you, we have to go outside right now, and I'm not saying that this is how you're presenting it, but coming from a place of exploration, just like if we did the breathing technique right now, and I said, let's try it and see how it makes you feel, just kind of explore what you feel afterwards. It kind of gives the participant the decision, am I going to participate in this or not? So it makes them feel like they have some control in what's happening and not being dictated to them whether it's time to go outside or be on their gadgets. And at the same time, it kind of goes along with our rules, right? Either you're going to relax them or they need to be changed a little bit. So although the same situation happened to me, right? So my kids were distant learners and they were on Zoom all day long. It made it so difficult to really minimize their electronic activity. So the rule that we decided that was going to change was, yes, their amount of time on electronics is going to be longer, but what are they using? What are they doing during that time? So if it's for learning, okay, that's one thing that they have to do. But instead of playing video games by themselves, I'd rather have them or turn it into a social experience where at least they're getting something that they really are lacking now because we've been home for so long. So if they're going to use the electronics, it's only for social experiences. So I think
that's like my battle, because when they're off the gadgets, not playing video games, they're fighting amongst each other like cats and dogs in the house. When they are playing video games, for whatever weird reason it is, they're all playing together the same video game and they're helping each other. So like, where's the?
I know it's very different. It's very different experiences, but I find also electronics in general, like once it's taken away, it's hard for our kids to readjust to reality. And sometimes we see those behaviors, like you're saying, the arguments and stuff, that's when they start to, you know, kind of creep up, and we see more and more of it is after the gadgets, right? And you wonder, like, what is happening? Like, they were so quiet for this whole time that they were on the gadgets. What is going on now? So I do think that there is a correlation between when they get off the gadgets and their behavior afterwards, kind of readjusting. And I think it also goes along with trying to make, you know, I'm not saying that we need to create every moment that our children are going through, but just trying to facilitate those positive experiences that we're having in the house. You know, it is difficult for everyone. As parents, it's difficult for us to be in the house all day long as well, and kind of disconnecting from our everyday life that was happening outside our home. And it's the same for our kids. So all those frustrations that you might be feeling and feeling overwhelmed, I think our kids feel that way too. It's hard to be in the house all day. And yes, you're saying you were saying that it's important for you to get them outside also. And I think it's a struggle. It's a struggle between knowing what's good for them and also giving them some kind of control of what they can be doing. So I think there needs to be a little bit of a give and take, and just kind of sensing what you think your kids needs are, and kind of finding a way to mitigate what you know that their needs are and what they're asking for at the same time. Does that help a little?
Has it? Sorry for the noises. I said, no, it makes sense. It's just, sorry. Guys, can you please stop? It's just, it's, especially now in the winter time, like, what do you, with the winter approaching, like, how do you make that work?
It's something that I've been thinking a lot about, especially where I am. We've been having many rainy days. And yes. So when it's not raining, the first thing I do is, okay, let's go out before even start to come out, because I know once those electronics start to come out, like you said, it's harder to pull them away from it. I think I told my husband, rain, shine, snow, we're going out, because I just think it's so important. And I think it's something that kids need. They need to move their bodies. They need to explore things outside. And I think it's so important. And what we were doing also was I was kind of creating things in our house for them to do. So I created an obstacle course for them to go through, and I made it like a competition. They need to they had to beat their own time. So they ran it once and then had to beat their own time. And the obstacle course was like so silly. Like, I had an old stroller in the house and they had to rock a baby doll in the stroller for a few minutes and then, you know, run to a ball and try to get it in a basket. Like, it was very simple, silly things, but it was fun and it got them moving. So sometimes, again, it's just thinking outside of the box and thinking what we can provide them with, or even having them build their own obstacle course can be, you know, something for a movement. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to go outside to do it. Okay, I'm going to continue unless you have another question.
Well, I was just going
thank you.
Suggestion also. I know it sounds silly, but we love going out in the rain. The rain and the snow are the best times to get the kids out, I think. When weather is nice, we would go and in our bathing suits, but now we just put on our boots and jump around in the rain. And when the snow comes, we make sure to get out there and get, roll around in the snow. But I think that weather shouldn't necessarily be the thing that keeps you from going out and about. And my son sometimes wants to go out without his raincoat on in the rain, and it might be cold snow for 5 minutes. I say, sure, go for it, as long as you take a warm shower afterwards, but it still gets him out there. And I think the idea of it being kind of taboo that, oh, we get to go out without our raincoat and do something that we wouldn't typically do would get him out faster than, oh, come on, we have to go outside because we need to go to the supermarket or we need to head to school. It's more like, oh, guess what? We're going to go out in the rain. We're going to walk all the way to where we're going in the rain and splash all the puddles or crunch up all the leaves or collect as many leaves as possible and then throw them in the air. So the more taboo it is, or the weirder or crazier the idea of going outside in the situation is, I think kind of gets them out there quicker and in a more exciting way.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Absolutely. Yes, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say, let me know when you need me to change the page.
I was going to say, can you change the slide? Thank you. I think you have my old version, so that's okay. I'm going to kind of not go into this one yet because there were a few slides before that. I know that we have some teachers that are with us here today and are interested for some skills that are either in person or remote. So that's what I wanted to provide. And all the things that we've talked about so far are things that we can implement in the classroom as well, right? So think about the stress response that we talked about before. If our kids are are in that stress response, they're going to have a harder time focusing. They're going to have a harder time thinking. And so as teachers, we have to take that into consideration, especially when we're seeing maybe a student or the class struggling. What are things that we can do to help? So all of the things that we've listed, making those social connections is still so important. And not only with kids their age, but with the teachers themselves. Knowing what our kids' family life is and having a connection with the family too is important during this time too, because we don't really know. We don't know what a child is experiencing at home or in school, and having the connection between the community, the family, and the school is so important, even more so now because there are so many changes happening. And again, not all of our students, just like not all people, are going to have the same experiences and need the same things. So we need to think about the personalities, their abilities, what other struggles they may have other than what is going on with this pandemic. So trying to make the educational experiences more meaningful can be so helpful to our kids. And even in person, doing exercises that are fun, but also help them socialize better or make connections to the education or academic part of it is so important. So for example, my son is working on writing. So they're coming up with stories. The teacher asked them to bring in something personal of theirs to share with the class, and that was how they told their stories. But it was so much more than that, right? Because my son is sharing something that's important to him and personal to him with his entire class and his teacher now, and it made that connection so much more important. And these are things that we can do with our kids that are Zooming as well, right? So doing scavenger hunts. If you're teaching, let's say, a specific letter, have a scavenger hunt of finding things in the house that begin with that letter. So it's making those social experiences and connecting the academics to it, which I think teachers are really good at anyway. It's just doing it on a different platform if it might be on Zoom. We also want to make sure that our teachers are talking about helpers and how our students in the class can be helpers to others. And it's just a way to kind of solidify the community experience that classes have. And I think that most teachers are really skilled with this, but I think it's just that much more important to make sure that you're working on those connections during this time and really talking about community responsibility. showing empathy and kindness and talking about what that looks like in a classroom and what that looks like on Zoom, and really teaching about flexibility, right? My kids call it a soupy day. Sometimes we have a soupy day where everything is mixed up, and that's inevitable. That's going to happen. And having that discussion of what things might look like when it's a soupy day and how are we going to handle that. So I think that definitely each school is different, but I would hope that teachers feel supported from the administration and are able to ask for help or guidance when they need it, or support when they need it. And that means maybe getting outside resources involved when things are not going as well as you think they should be, or you have concerns about specific students. So for our virtual learners and our virtual teachers, it is definitely a big change. During the pandemic and during the shutdown, I actually was teaching my yoga classes through Zoom, and it was such a different experience. I had to revamp my whole curriculum because there was so much, not barriers, but it was just a different experience on Zoom, that you kind of have to think and look at things very differently and come up with new ideas on how to engage our students, right? If our student walks away from the screen, we can't redirect them to come back. That's it, like, right? We're not there in the room with them, and it makes it that much harder. So finding ways to keep our kids engaged, and again, using those social connections can really help us do that. Screen fatigue is definitely real. There's a lot of research about how adults get screen fatigue. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more after this pandemic about how children get screen fatigue. And there are so many things that we can do to help mitigate that. There's my daughter's optometrist was telling me there's a 20-20 rule. For every 20 minutes that you're looking at a screen, you need to look away for 20 seconds. When we're looking at our screens, we're not blinking as many times as we would regularly blink if we weren't looking at the screen. So that makes our eyes feel dry. And to help us focus and to help our eye function, we need our eye to, have some moisture. So doing the 20-20 exercise can be really good for our kids during the day and to help with that screen fatigue. Zooming rules, just like you have our classroom rules, we should be having Zooming rules as well. What does our Zoom experience look like? What does it look like if one of our kids needs a break? Are they able to get the teacher's attention to say, I kind of need a break right now? And is that something that maybe we need to fit into our schedule as well? Playing educational games on Zoom, I think, is a really good way to keep them engaged. There are ways to teach our lessons and then use a Kahoots game to kind of just assess what are they learning, did they know it? And it's also fun for kids to kind of, either they're working together on a Kahoot or they're all independent, but I think kids find games like that kind of fun. And technical issues are inevitable, right? They're going to happen. I mean, my Zoom right now, right, our panel right now is a perfect example that I got kicked off the internet because of the weather. So it is inevitable and it is going to happen. And we need to prepare our kids about those soupy days or about those technical issues that might happen. What does that mean for our kids? If our teacher got kicked off the Zoom, what should our kids be sitting there doing? So maybe our teachers can use some kind of plan B, right? Either have things they can draw or write or work on worksheets while the teacher is trying to get back on. Or maybe it means that we need to teach our students how to kind of go with the flow when our original plan or schedule doesn't work out. So it's really helping our kids prepare for those instances that might really affect how our educational setting looks like or our educational day looks like. And it goes back to giving information, age-appropriate information, so that our kids don't feel so out of control and kind of know what to expect. I was even thinking, sometimes I noticed while my kids were Zooming, the teacher didn't notice that they were muted, that them themselves were muted, and the kids couldn't hear them. And I was just thinking, even if teachers can come up with some kind of sign that the kids can show them just so that they know that the kids can't hear them would make it so much easier for the kids, because then the kids are sitting there. I saw it with my own kids, that they would be frustrated because they couldn't hear what was going on, but the teacher was continuing, not realizing that they were muted. So these frustrations definitely happen. I think I'm up to that slide now. Yeah. So I really, really believe that kindness and empathy are superpowers, and it can really help in so many situations, especially with our approach to working with our kids, right? It helps build resilience and acceptance, and it helps really, it keeps out that judgment piece that sometimes creeps in when we're talking to our kids. And that can be really helpful, especially when we want them to make good decisions. So how can we show kindness and empathy? And I think one big way is to really practice self-care. Self-care for us is so important, because I feel like as parents, when we're doing well, our family is running well, our household looks well. When we're in a bad situation, things might be a little bit more chaotic, right? And it's the same for teachers. Burnout is real, right? Like, we get burnt out from all our responsibilities and stress. And so having a self-care practice can really help us go from that stress response to our balanced selves. And it can really help teach our kids that self-care is also important for them as well. And it should be something that they should be practicing. So some things that we can do is take breaks, right? Like we've been talking about. Our mental health and physical health is very important. And doing those self-care practices like the breathing and the meditation and going on hikes and the movement, all of these things that we've been talking about can be self-care practices that you incorporate during your day. They don't have to be long. They can be 1 or 2 minutes. And the more you practice them, the easier it will be to use them when you actually need them and are feeling stressed. So how do we approach our kids with kindness and empathy? And I think language has a very big part in how we do that, right? So when we were doing our breathing exercise, I kind of invited you to explore something new, right? Let's do it and just see. Let's try. What does it make us feel like, right? That's I think a nicer and kinder way than saying, let's do this breathing exercise now. It's going to make you feel wonderful and great, like you just had a vacation. That's a little bit unrealistic. And also, when we use the kindness and empathy approach and kind of inviting and asking for exploration, it takes out that judgment piece, like I said before. And kindness and empathy with our behaviors can be using active listening skills, right? When our kids are talking to us and making those special connections, we're going to be looking at them, right? Eye to eye, showing interest, responding to things that they're saying, and trying to understand what they're trying to tell us. And sometimes that means kind of figuring out, are they just wanting or trying to vent to us, or are they looking for us to come up with some solutions for them? Are they coming because they have a problem that they need fixed, or they're just frustrated and just need to let out some steam? And I just think it's really important, like we said earlier, to be in the moment, right? Be present in the moment without distractions. So Ali, you can move on to the next slide. So it's really hard to know what exactly everyone is going through during this pandemic, but my intention here was to provide an array of techniques that you can try, right? See if they help, or, maybe something resonated with you today that you might want to try to implement, and maybe it'll help and maybe it won't, but at least it gave you an opportunity to try something new. And I think that, like I said before, they can be used with your family within classrooms, and you get to pick and choose what feels comfortable for you in that setting. So again, I'm really honored to be here with everyone tonight. And if anyone has any questions or want to discuss anything, I guess this would be the time, right, Ali?
Yes, I was just getting off the
That's
screen
okay.
share. I actually have a question from Facebook.
Sure.
someone is asking, how can you get your youngster who is 4 years old to understand that for 4 days of the week they're at school, but unfortunately for one of the days of the week she has to do her school stuff from home. The transition is very hard for her. And I mean, I know we see that a lot here, at least in Allentown, we have a lot of hybrid schooling. So some kids are in school 2 days a week, some kids are in school 3 days, some of them are 1 week on, 1 week off. And depending on where you're at in school or how many kids are in your class, depends on how many days you're actually in person. So how do you explain to a kid why they're not there for that one day or the week on, week off, and the whole bigger picture of it, and help them cope with, I guess, the disconnect from being in person and being with your friends for those few days for such a young child?
Yes, it is a very young child. And that's why we also have to think about the information that we're providing and making it age appropriate. And something that you can try and see if it works is maybe doing something visual, like using a calendar. What days am I in school? What days am I at home? And kind of trying to figure out what the difficulty is. Is it that she or he misses their friends? And is there a way to connect with them maybe later in the day? Or is it something else that is a disconnect for them?
Well, hopefully she'll respond quickly, but I appreciate that. I mean, I know that in this particular situation that I think they're Zooming during the day for those kids who are home. So it's almost like a camera in a classroom and the kids can interact, especially because, I mean, they're 4 years old. It's, I think, pre-K or preschool.
Oh, is it like alternated classes? So they see the other kids in the class and she or he can't understand why they're not in the classroom?
I think so.
I see. Okay. Yeah. So that definitely makes it confusing, right? Especially for a 4-year-old. But maybe having that calendar and explaining that there are 2 different groups and the schedule changes for each of them will help them understand. I think, especially at the age of 4, where their modality of learning is so spread out, right? So having that visual can really help them solidify the information that we're trying to give them.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any more questions? Feel free to unmute, ask away.
I have another question.
Sure.
How do you help the kids transition from homework? Like they don't have a lot of Zoom classes, but when they come home from school, because they're so overwhelmed with the mask and with all the protocols and wearing having the plexiglass and having just all those regulations in school, when they come home, they used to have more structure. Now they're just throwing their bags everywhere and they just want to run away from everything. How do you get the kids to go back on the routine and get more structured?
It's so difficult. Can I ask, if you don't mind, how old your children are?
13, 11, 10, and 6.
So I'm going to say a lot of it might also just be age appropriate behavior.
That's why I laughed.
Definitely age appropriate behavior, but I totally can relate to that. My kids are feeling the same way. They just started 2 weeks ago and it's been a very big transition for them. Although they're very happy to be in school, like you said, it's very different, right? And the expectations and the stress that they put on them for wearing the masks and the new protocols is a lot. And so
it's also them not knowing. It's the inevitable. Are we having school tomorrow? Are we not having school tomorrow? Are we going to be under quarantine again? Are we not? They're like sitting on pins and needles every day.
Right. So I think coming up with a schedule with them will help them feel more in control, right? Because we're talking about the inevitable and the unknown. And as an adult, right, we feel like we're out of control sometimes. We don't have the control to make decisions because things are so up in the air. our kids are feeling the same way. And if we really think about it, our kids' schedules are pretty much dictated for them, right? When they wake up, when they go to sleep, when they eat lunch, when they eat dinner, when they're in school, when they're not in school. So it's a very big change for them. And I think having them be partners in the process of creating their own schedule might be helpful to you. And something that might be helpful to them is when they do get home, letting them know that they have, let's say, maybe 10 or 15 minutes to just kind of relax. No electronics though, because then it'll be hard to go back to doing schoolwork. But anything else, just 10 or 15 minutes to kind of just chill, take a breather, you know, kind of disconnect from the chaos or the stress that they may be feeling, and then coming back fresh to start homework or whatever it is that they need to get done.
So I also have one child that struggles, I feel like, a lot more when it comes, like, this pandemic has given her, she's a child that has OCD, and she's very overwhelmed by it. But this pandemic and being home and now transitioning back to school has made her brain into a shambles. Like, she's like an oatmeal mixed with things that shouldn't be mixed. She's so overwhelmed. Her things are everywhere. Her head is everywhere. It's just because she's so overwhelmed, she's losing things, and she's tantruming. She's going insane.
Right. So it's like what we were talking about, the stress response. That's what happens when we're in that stress response. We can't think clearly. We forget things.
But she doesn't want to breathe. She doesn't want to take those deep breaths. We've gone to therapy.
We can do other things, right? Just knowing, letting her know that you're there and showing her the kindness and the empathy that she might need during this difficult time for her might be enough for her to kind of just say, okay, like, it's kind of also accepting where we are in the moment, right? I don't think any of us are functioning like we were functioning before a pandemic. I think all of us in some way are feeling stressed or overwhelmed. And sometimes that's okay. This is the best that we can do in the situation that we're in. And I think even administrators and schools and teachers, they're understanding that our kids are probably not going to be learning as much as they would in a regular year. And I think sometimes we just have to be accepting of where we are in the moment and show kindness to ourselves and to our children, because it is hard. If it's hard for us, just imagine what they're going through. It's definitely a difficult situation. But have you, I don't know if you feel comfortable sharing, but have you reached out to the school or the school psychologist maybe they can work with her while she's in school?
So she has,
or somehow make it a little bit easier for her. Maybe.
So I have spoken with the teachers to try to make it easier for her. Some teachers are less understanding than others. Some are like, okay, we'll make it work, you know, because they have past history with me with my other kids. Others are just like, no, like she's a big girl. She should be understanding the curriculum. She should be able to like catch up. And it's hard to get a teacher to understand that some kids have easier time transitioning from homeschooling to being schooled, and others don't. Like, one of the teachers is just like, no, like, the kid needs to know that they're in school is school, they're getting older and they have more work to do.
It's a very difficult situation to navigate for sure. If you want to talk more, not on the Zoom, that's definitely okay with me if you want to reach out. I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable in any way, but I think that it's a difficult situation to be in for sure.
It's hard for them. It's very hard for the kids.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Yafa. And thank you, Sally. I have a question from more of a teacher, or I guess more, it's a unique situation. As a parent, if you're home with your kids that are virtual learning, you're able to be there. If you're able to be there and you're not working in the next room, it's a little easier to guide them through their meltdowns and be there for them. But as a teacher, or even a babysitter, let's say, who's there while parents aren't there, and your children are having meltdowns while they're in school, virtual learning, how can you, not as the parent, be there to help them and guide them. I mean, I see it on a daily basis where kids are doing their virtual learning and they just are done. They don't want to be on the screen anymore. They're tired of sitting there. They're sitting upside down, climbing the walls. And, you know, we've got all these virtual pods now popping up everywhere because you've got working parents that need to you know, be at work, and kids who are of all different schools, all different ages, learning in the same location, and they're just melting down left and right. How can teachers or babysitters or those who aren't actual parent, the children's actual parents or the children's actual teachers that are there, how can they help them? How can they guide them?
I just want to make sure that I'm understanding. Are you asking how the person who is on the electronic can help them, or in person with them?
In person with them. Sorry, I know that was confusing.
That's okay. Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think in all ages, we're seeing this, right? It's not something that's only happening with young kids. It's things that are happening with older kids as well, because like we talked about, like electronic fatigue, screen fatigue, it's a real thing. And it's so much harder to learn through electronic than being in person, because in person gives us so much more information, right? We're able to see people's facial expressions. We're able to see things up close, feel them, touch them, learn in different modalities. And now we're very restricted in the way that we're introduced to all of these subjects and the way that we're learning. I think the way that we're set up at home makes a big difference. So I think it is important to be able to have an adult supervise whatever Zooming is happening and going on, and providing that child with the ability to say, I need a break before I can continue. Because what we want to do is kind of try to get the child to take a break before they're having that meltdown, so they don't get to a place where it's harder to get them back from. So if they're aware of themselves, or if the person, the adult with them, is aware of what starts to happen before the tantruming, they can say to them, let's take a break. And you can have even like a box of sensory items like a glitter jar or squishy balls or little fidgets that they can just play with while they're sitting there, just to help them kind of relax and calm down before it gets so escalated that they can't come back from. And I think as teachers, this is something that I think is important to help us through the Zooming experience, because we're not there with our kids. And so giving them the opportunity to really identifying themselves when they need a break, or providing it for them throughout the Zooming experience, might be beneficial for everyone.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I know my question was a little complex there.
That's okay. Oh, and I started thinking about the way that the room is set up. You know, it's very different. My kids, when we, at the beginning of the shutdown, the way that we were Zooming was kind of, I mean, I don't even know how we got through it. I had one kid on my cell phone, one person was on my laptop, another person was on a very small tablet that was cracked. I mean, these were the electronics that we had in our house at the time. And I feel like it added to the difficulty that they were experiencing. So when we started the year knowing that they were going to be on Zoom, we kind of had spaces arranged in the house where they had their own things that were near them, whatever they needed. They packed their book bags every night as if they were going to school. They had we made like little workstations where they were going to be working, so that they knew this space was for school. And I told them, once we come into this space, it's like you're in school, and it's very hard because they're at home, and the behavior that we see at home can be very different than at school. And so we have to kind of change the mindset to help them switch over and understand that right now we're in school and not at home. And it is a very difficult transition for sure. And it takes practice.
That actually brought me to my next question I was going to ask you. Obviously, we have different behaviors at home and at school. How, as teachers, can we address at-home behavior with parents when the kids are really at home, it's hard for kids to understand that, you're in school now when you're at home. So how do we address that to from the teachers to parents, and how they need to have that shift in mind and that shift in behavior when in class?
So I think before the conversation happens with the teacher to the parent, I think the conversation needs to happen with the parent and the child, right? Because we talked about earlier our classroom rules. When we're in a regular classroom, every teacher is going to have her community rules or classroom rules that she uses in her class, and the kids are expected to follow. It's the same when we're on doing remote learning. Our classrooms should still have rules, and there are certain behaviors that are still expected. And I think once those rules are set and really discussed in a manner of, I know that we're at home, but we have to pretend once we're in this space, or once the Zoom turns on, we can imagine that our space is turning into our school building, and really going from there and setting up rules that can help just mitigate those behaviors that sometimes we don't see in school but are happening at home. And if that doesn't help, and with practice doesn't get better, then I think that the conversation needs to be had between the teacher and the parents, and kind of just getting the parents on board, saying, this is what we're doing right now, and we're doing these, we've put these rules in place because we're trying to make it easier for the kids, because we know that it's so difficult to understand that they are home but really in school, and we can work together to make a better learning environment for your child.
Thank you. I have another question. Sorry, I'm just, as they're coming in, I'm sharing them with you.
No problem.
How would you address a situation when you've got little ones who are really struggling to wear a mask? But now they're not, it's more than just their own mask. They're reaching for other kids' masks, and they're just not understanding that safety guideline. How do you teach them? Do you have any tricks or guidance for that, especially when they're really young?
So I think, like I've said before, right, this is a very unique situation we've all found ourselves in. No one was prepared for this. No one even thought, let me, teach my child how to wear masks all day long, right? It was, no one's thought ever went to there, right? So I think we need to take it as how we teach most new things to our children, right? With practice, with guidance, and sometimes using incentives can really work. So if you can use a sticker chart to try to get them to wear it longer, and to make sure that they're not pulling it off other people, and having them work for some kind of goal, whether it's having a special time with a teacher or with a friend, or a few extra minutes of recess, or whatever it is that child really values, can really help us to get that child used to wearing a mask.
I got one more for you. From a parent, how would you explain, or how would you handle when your children can't wear masks going out in places, or if they've got special needs, whether it be medical, developmental, whatever it may be, but you're in public places, you have to go places, you have to go to doctor's offices and things, and your child just can't wear a mask? How do you address the people around you, the teachers, the doctors, the staff, people who are looking at you, at the parent, and you're doing your best that you can, but obviously your child cannot do it for whatever reason?
I think that's a very hard situation to be in, and I don't know that I have the right answer. I can tell you what I might do as a parent in a situation like that. I really think that in a situation like that, the person that doesn't feel comfortable are the people that are around you, right? The people that are reacting to this child that's not wearing a mask. And it's not your responsibility to, come up with, not excuses, but even give them any legitimate reaction. And so I feel like you're doing the best that you can with the information that you have and trying to be as safe as you can be. And it's really up to the people around you to decide whether they're going to keep their distance or move away from you, or, you know, anything else it might be.
Thank you. I really appreciate that answer. I'm going to take a step back. If anybody else has any questions, please feel free to ask away. I know, Sally, you had some little topics if you feel the need to bring them up.
So, sure, if no one has anything else, but we can wait a few minutes just to see. So some of the things that I was going to bring up, and it's some of the things that we went over in the presentation while I was trying to think of techniques and ways, was really, you know, the new platform of using Zoom, and how do we create that community, the class community on electronics, you know, and through Zoom. And you know, the thing that I came up with is using our rules and discussions and making those social connections. But I was wondering if anyone else had a way or a technique that they think might be helpful. If there are any teachers that have had some experience, I would be very, you know, open to ideas and things that they've been trying.
Back when, I guess when we were still closed, because we've been open now for a while, but back when we were closed at the end of the school year, I did a lot of virtual play dates with my students, where I would bring 2 students on at a time, and we would play like I Spy or different games, and kind of encourage the conversation between the 2 children. And I take a step back to make sure that they were still building on those skills, making sure they still remembered how to have that conversation once they get to see each other in person. And I felt that that was really helpful, especially once we reopened and the kids got to see each other again in person. They were like, oh, remember when we did this? And remember I got to see your bedroom? And they even took their devices and they would give each other tours around the house. And that would lead to virtual play dates that they did on their own. I would pair the parents up and let them kind of have that social interaction. And these kids were 3, 4 years old. So it was really interesting for them. And I think it was different and fun.
I think that's a great technique, and that's such a good way to also teach them skills and make sure that they're making those connections that we've talked about. Thank you for sharing that. For sure, that's such a wonderful way. It actually reminded me of something that my son's teachers were doing last year after the shutdown. Was they were calling to speak to him over the phone, which I thought was so nice, because it was like those check-ins that we were talking about.
Awesome. Thank you. Did you have another question or
No,
topic?
that was it. I thought like it would start some kind of discussion.
Well, I'm sure other people had experienced other things. I know my son's teachers last year, they would WhatsApp him to do their check-ins, and he thought that was cool because it wasn't on the computer. He was so tired of sitting at the computer or sitting at a tablet. He was able to take the phone with him, and he could, you know, send them pictures and have that conversation in a different way. And just being able to move around with it, I think that also was helpful. So I know it's not so easy when you're in big schools and doing all those one-on-ones, but I know it really goes a long way, or 2-on-1, 3-on-1.
Definitely, yes.
So I actually had my son's teacher, he was like fed up with the Zoom, and they would have to do reading a couple of times a week. So what had happened was my son started shutting off his Zoom. He started shutting off his video. He started hanging up in the middle of the call. And so the teacher found a different initiative, and I really, really appreciated it, because he would call the house he asked me for my house number, and he asked me why did my son get off the Zoom? And I said, well, he said he just doesn't want to go in class anymore. He's 6 years old. Like, what am I supposed to tell him? And so his technique was that he would call the house and he would say, okay, let's read for a few minutes, and then if you're gonna do the right job, I'm gonna mail you. Oh, my son complained to him, his throat was hurting him. So he made a deal with him that if he was gonna read every night with him, he was gonna mail to him like a special gift and the tea bag so that he can feel better. And he did that. And he purposely would make mistakes during the reading. So when it was like the teacher's turn, the teacher would make a mistake during the reading. My son would laugh at him. You're not reading the words right. It's read like this, but he found a way to catch him. And like, these are the teachers. Till now, he still has a connection with my son, but these teachers that really go beyond their requirement to show the kids that it's not just about their paycheck, that it's also about, the future of our generation.
Absolutely. It's making those connections, meaningful connections. Thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful.
Welcome. I thought it was very nice.
It is, absolutely, definitely. And you can tell just by, the scenario that you gave, how much that teacher, your son is important to that teacher, which is amazing.
Right.
Thank you, Yafa, for sharing. Thank you, Sally. It's getting late now. I just wanted to thank you all for joining us tonight. And I wanted to just remind you about our next parent panel is actually going to be next week, because the following week is Thanksgiving. So next week's parent panel is on the December dilemma, how to navigate through the holiday season. I know it's a hard time for us all. So I hope you guys can join us back next week for another fun topic. Thank you all so much. If you have any questions, you can always email me at Wiener, WIENER, @lvjcc.org, or you can post a message on the Facebook group, the Facebook live feed, and we will get back to you. Thank you all so much and have a great night.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Good night. Thank you.
Good night.